Eric Bozak,
Here.
Rob Levitt,
Here.
Cindy Hirschfield. Here. Katie Hostetler is absent. Mike Horvath.
Here.
And Bob Kaplan.
Here.
Excellent, you have a quorum.
Excellent. The first order is to approve the minutes from August 1st, 20 of this year. Any comments, questions, changes?
My comment had more to do with the property we visited. Because of the location of the garage, there would be a car most likely parked on the street. Could that be reflected?
Rob, do you know what page in the minutes?
Is it, I think it's page 4.
Page 4, I see it.
Yes, 4.
Got it. That on-street parking? I'm sorry, could you say?
Because of the location of the garage, it seemed likely that the resident would park their car on the street.
Any other clarifications, questions, changes? Do we have a motion to approve
Motion to approve
with Rob's change?
with Rob's change.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? I'm gonna abstain, I wasn't there that day. Next order is to continue public hearing on the Jadwin Black Mountain PUD sketch plan application until October 3rd.
Do you need a motion?
I think we do, correct?
We do.
Yeah.
So moved.
We have a first from Rob, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Cindy, all in favor? Aye.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. So the next item then is a public hearing on 168 Original Road, a minor subdivision application and associated land use requests. I will leave it to staff and to the applicant.
Yeah, let me please share my screen here, just a quick second. Okay, we do have the applicant on Zoom this evening, Michael Fox. This is a public hearing on an application submitted by Michael Fox requesting minor subdivision, slope review, community housing review, and site plan review to subdivide the property at 168 Original Road. You can see the property right here on the map. This is Original Road coming up from Highway 82, and then it breaks off onto Original Lane. And so it's this property running between Original Lane and Original Road on the top side. And the applicant is proposing to subdivide that into 2 properties of about 20,000 square foot each. And they're proposing to construct a new single-family house on the upper lot that would be created with access from Original Road. The property subject to the application, as I noted, is 168 Original Road. Currently contains a single-family, half a duplex, which is located down here. It's 0.9 acres, and it contains 30% slopes and is zoned R2 under the town code. The proposal, as I noted, is to create 2 new lots out of it. And so they're proposing to maintain the half duplex on the lower lot, which is known as B2 in the application. And then they're proposing to construct a single-family house of about 4,400 square foot on the upper lot, which is known as B3 in the application. The single-family house is proposed to be accessed from Original Road. And as I noted, it's proposed at 4,400 square foot. And here you see the site plan of the single-family house. And then in your packet, you have photo simulations and elevation drawings, as well as floor plans of the proposed single-family house. The applicant is proposing to provide the water and sewer to come up from original lane, as you can see here. They're proposing to bring it up from original lane because that is where the Mid-Valley Metro District suggested that it come from. The applicants also have proposed to pay cash in lieu of providing affordable housing mitigation, and that is part of the review. In reviewing the application, staff has identified a series of discussion items that are in your packet. They include consistency with the master plan, consistency with the character of the surrounding area, affordable housing mitigation, compliance with the R2 zone district, the slope review, as well as the utilities, and then wildfire mitigation, green building, and the fire district comments. So in reviewing the application, going into the first discussion item, which is consistency with the master plan. It is identified as existing residential on the future land use map that you have in the master plan, and you can see the parcel right here identified in red. It's also in the town's urban growth boundary. The urban growth boundary line is this red dotted line going around it. And then it's also in the single-family typology with a hillside overlay. The master plan includes goals related to increasing density in appropriate locations. Staff believes that the subdivision request is generally acceptable in that manner if wildfire mitigation is adequately addressed, as well as vegetation removal is mitigated. However, staff does believe that the idea of small houses on small lots is not represented in this proposal. In terms of the consistency with the surrounding area, the applicants have proposed 4,400 square foot on the new residence. And while it is true that there are some larger houses close to the top of original lane that are around 5,000 square feet, staff believes that the majority of the residences on the lower portion of original road in the original lane area are within the 2,000 to 3,400 square foot range for, 2,000 to 4,000 square foot range. So staff would recommend that if P&Z is interested in approving the subdivision request, that the square footage allowed be reduced to somewhere in the 3,000 to 3,500 total square foot range. Once again, the applicant is proposing the 4,400 square foot. As far as affordable housing mitigation is concerned, the applicant is proposing to pay cash in lieu. The creation of 3 or fewer new single-family houses that do not exceed 3,000 gross square foot would be exempt from affordable housing mitigation. However, as noted, the applicant is proposing houses that are greater than the 3,000 total square foot. So they'd be required to mitigate for affordable housing. And so that being the case, they propose to provide cash in lieu of providing units. This is discretionary on the part of the P&Z and Town Council. So there's a draft condition in the set of conditions that would require the applicant to pay cash in lieu at the time of permit issuance. Other topics included compliance with the R2 zone district. The applicant is proposing to meet the setbacks, the height, as well as to satisfy the floor area, the underlying R2 zone district. However, as staff noted, staff would recommend limiting the floor area to somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 square foot to be more consistent with the lower portion of original road. The half duplex on the B2 lot, if it were redeveloped, the draft conditions would require it to come into compliance with the dimensional requirements of the R2 zone district, which would include meeting the setback requirements. As it currently sits, it doesn't meet the setback requirements because it is a 0 lot line and a common wall with the neighboring property. Other topics include slope review. As noted, there are some 30% slopes on the site. They're the areas that are shown in purple on this map and in your application. The applicant has tried to avoid them. The draft conditions would require that tree removal, obtain a tree removal permit and mitigate for trees removed per the town code. The draft conditions also would require any retaining walls to be terraced if they're over 6 feet in height, which is a requirement of the slope review. Also, there are draft conditions that we typically require in slope reviews in the hillside overlay that would require the applicant to use non-reflective materials as well as to use dark earth tone colors so that it would blend better with the hillside. As I mentioned, related to utilities, the applicant has proposed to bring the utilities for water and sewer up from original lane, which is where new utility mains were installed with the Broughton subdivision, which is on the south side of original lane. The Mid-Valley Metro District was requiring these water and sewer utilities to be brought up from original lane because there's unknown conditions related to how good the water and sewer lines are in original road going up, and so they thought it appropriate to suggest bringing them up from original lane. There's conditions in the draft set of conditions that you have in your memo that would require the applicant to provide a plan for revegetation, as well as to dedicate necessary easements across the lower lot for providing sewer lines across it to the upper lot. Other topics included the fire mitigation and fire district comments. The fire district is requiring that any new houses be built out there regardless of the size. Have fire sprinkler systems meeting their requirements, and that has been carried over into the draft conditions. Also, they're required to meet the wildfire mitigation requirements related to building materials as well as landscaping, in that they need to have a buffer area around the house that is not planted with trees. So in total this evening, staff would suggest taking applicant comments, and we do have the applicant on the Zoom call here, and then taking public comments as it is a public hearing, and then providing P&Z discussion. Ultimately, P&Z could make a recommendation to council if you're comfortable. However, as noted, if P&Z is interested in supporting the application, staff would recommend limiting the allowance on the lots to 3,000 to 3,500 square foot of total square feet. Other options available for decisions this evening for the P&Z could include continuing the public hearing if you needed additional information and identifying what additional information you may need to make a recommendation. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen here, and staff would suggest asking questions of the applicant or staff if you have them at this point.
Does the applicant want to make a statement?
Yeah, the applicant. Michael Fox is on. Let me allow you to talk. Michael.
Recording in
comments
progress.
for the P&Z?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
Is it possible to allow me to have my video on, or is that not something that's able to be done?
Yes, you should be able to turn on your video.
It's on his end now.
Maybe.
You've been promoted to a panelist, so you should be able to. There
There you
go.
are.
We can see you.
Great. I think, sorry, we're just getting all the technical difficulties worked out. Thank you for having us. I'm Michael. This is my wife, Missy.
Hi,
Thank you for having us as well. I'm sorry we can't be there in person. I am expecting a child due next week and need to deliver in Denver, so we're on the Front Range right now. But wish we could be there. Thank you.
But yeah, I did write down just a couple of notes that I wanted to just bring up in introducing our property. I guess first and foremost, thank you all, especially you, James, for just working with us. We submitted our application in 2022 for the first time, and James and I have been, and Michael Ettinger, who I believe is there, have been kicking this back and forth. So thank you for all that communication, James. I did just want to note that Michael Ettinger, who's in the audience tonight, will be available to answer any questions just about our design and compliance with the building codes. In terms of what we tried to do, we put forth a conceptual design that slopes down steps down with the slope. We really did try to minimize the disruption of the slopes, minimize the use of retaining walls, and minimize the use of regrading. We really did try to be, we tried to incorporate the burden or change that this would have on any neighbors. And I think from where you were earlier in doing your site review, walking up the road, this would appear like a single story home. And I believe that the top of the home would basically be at sight line with those walking. I did just want to re-highlight what James said in terms of that housing mitigation compliance. We are willing to do the cash in lieu, which would be equal to 25% of the net square footage of the residential development. The exact amount of this community housing mitigation fee would be determined just based on the total square footage that is approved and would eventually be permitted for. But we do anticipate this to be, a six-figure large fee that we would be paying in terms of housing mitigation. Just in commenting on the technical review committees about notes about square footage, we really did try to put forth an application that complied with the Basalt Municipal Code, which allows us to build up to 5,000 square feet, and also to consider the impact on, both the city and the neighborhood. In reading what the technical review committee analyzed in terms of our square footage, we don't feel that it accurately reflects the character of our neighborhood. Our proposal does, again, comply with the residential R2 low density district. And we did feel that it also does promote the Basalt master plan values, which encourages community housing mitigation. And I would just note, in the P&Z packet that was provided, an email chain between James and I regarding the square footage was included. And I did include a map of our neighborhood with the square footages of the homes, with garages and, basements and everything included in that. And I included an Excel sheet of all of that. I would just note that in terms of the homes within 300 yards of our proposed minor subdivision, 10 of the 25 properties within those 300 yards are larger than what we've proposed. And we did feel that we were in line with the average, whether that be on lower original road, on original road in general, or just within 300 yards of our home. Some of the structures that are next to our home include 227 Original Road. I believe the owner of that home is there tonight. That home, including the garage, is 3,972 square feet, and that's just across Original Road. The other next door neighbor, 190 Original Road, is 3,831 square feet. And again, the duplex where we live right now, the total square footage of that structure is 5,227 square feet. So, and just in terms of consistency, we felt that we were within a likeness to the neighborhood and just were really trying to be compliant with the Basalt codes and what we're allowed to do and you know, just redeveloping this. And so, and just again, our conceptual step-down design does decrease the visual impact of the proposal. So again, you know, we've been working on this for some time, and we are excited to move forward with it and, you know, hopefully have a long-term space for us to live in. And we do really thank you. And I know that any change to any community in Basalt is a really big deal. We've tried to be really cognizant of that and just as neighborly as possible as we can be, and we will continue to do that. But we do just appreciate you having us, and any feedback you can give is welcome. You know, we're here to answer any questions, so thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Misty. We will then go around and do commissioner questions for staff or for the applicant. Rob, we'll start with you, if you have any.
To start with, James, you talked about there's a zero lot line on the duplex because it's a common wall.
Sure.
How does that factor in?
So it factors in, the applicant is not proposing to redevelop that structure at the current time. What we have in the draft conditions is that if they were to redevelop that structure, that a new structure to be built on that lower lot would have to come into compliance with the setbacks, which would mean they couldn't have an attached duplex. So they'd have to be 10
So
foot
they
off
would
the
be
side.
substituting a single-family home for the duplex?
If they chose to redevelop it. We're not forcing through the conditions that they redevelop it, and the applicant's not proposing it at this
Okay.
point.
At a later date. So if they were approved to build the home they're asking for at the other end of the property,
Right.
and then at a later date came back and wanted to redevelop the duplex, they would have to redevelop it so that it met the setback standards of the zone.
And they would have to go through a site plan review with the P and Z on a specific design.
Okay. Seems, well, do we do comments now or not just questions?
Just questions right now.
Do we have this FAR of the, their half of the duplex, square footage?
Michael, do you know your
You
floor
said-
area on your?
It's 1,400 square feet, or excuse me, 1,456 square feet. That does not include our garage. The garage is 312 square feet.
No, James, I know that has to go through slope review. Just, could you educate me exactly why? I mean, engineers, architects can design around it, so what, is there another reason that it needs review?
Slope review needs to happen on any property that has 30% slopes, which this property does, and any property in the Hillside Overlay District, regardless of whether they're impacting those slopes or not. And this property's in the Hillside Overlay District, basically everything.
Is that for the safety and well-being of that particular property or the neighboring properties?
It's for both.
Engineering could figure that out. It seems like,
Yeah,
don't know why we
the
have
slope
to-
review has both the technical requirements for safety, but it also has aesthetic requirements for stuff like retaining walls.
Okay.
It has requirements that retaining walls, if they're over a certain height, be terraced. It has requirements related to revegetation, limiting vegetation disturbance as much as possible.
Thanks. And then there was a letter from, I don't know, traffic engineer in the packet that referenced 6 vehicle trips a day. I thought we used 10 vehicle trips a day for a single-family home.
You know, it depends on the size of the house, but yeah, in that realm of 10 per day.
Okay, so he said maybe 4 vehicles at that residence, so, you know, maximum of 24 trips a day was the number that was used. But that doesn't include, in my mind, mail delivery, servicemen, visitors, right? So that gets us up to 10. So you're looking at 40 trips a day.
Are you asking for confirmation on that?
Yes, is that fair? Well, because the packet says 24, but you're talking essentially more than that.
You know, I think generally it would be based on whatever the ITE manual says, which is generally 8 to 10 trips.
Great, thanks, that's all.
Bill?
Yes, I have some questions. First off, James, this is not part of a PUD like the rest of Aspen Junction is it?
It's not, no, it's outside of the Aspen Junction
So
subdivision.
it's like the Broughton subdivision, it's just a minor subdivision, so it wasn't a part of PUD.
That's
Okay,
correct.
also, it appears from what's shown from Kumar that the soils report isn't complete. Looks like a preliminary report. Is that the case?
It is a preliminary report, and I believe we have a requirement that requires them to finalize that before permit.
Because the final report would show more detailed recommendations for mitigation and stuff, and I didn't see it in there. My next question is, it looks from the architectural drawings that the structural design hasn't been really started yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. We typically don't require the structural until time of permit.
Okay. And also, my last question is, what's the status of the second duplex down below? Is that an ADU, or is that just two separate houses on one lot?
That is two separate dwelling units that are separated by a property line at their common wall. So they're on two separate properties.
No, I mean, all on, this is, what lot is this one, B3? Yeah, B3. So just on lot B3, you have a new house, if it's approved, and then down below, you're gonna have half a duplex. What's the status of that half a duplex?
You mean as to whether they're proposing to adjust it or
Yeah,
not?
does it become an ADU? Is that even allowed by the zone district, have two separate houses with two separate utilities on one lot?
Well, they're proposing to subdivide it into two lots, so they're not proposing another unit on that
New
lot.
house
So
would
if
be
they-
B3 and the old one would
Oh, I see,
stay.
so it's three separate lots?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it, okay.
So this is the current
Okay.
split.
I thought they would all be on one lot, okay. I got it, I'm done.
Cindy?
I do not have any additional questions.
Mike?
You mentioned a requirement to tier any wall greater than 6 feet. Is that part of the code, or is that something you're proposing on this property?
That's part of the code.
Because it seems like every wall on the property is greater than 6 feet in height, and tiering those would greatly adjust the site plan.
Yeah, they're required by code to be tiered if they're over 6 foot.
That's all I have for now.
Bob?
I do have questions about the recommendation for the 3,500 feet maximum versus what's code, and some understanding of that, but more understanding of that.
Yeah, so the criteria for site plan review as well as slope review talk about consistency with the surrounding area. And the master plan also has language in it about consistency with the surrounding area. And so staff's thoughts were going back to the map of square footages around the subject site, is that those were generally between 2,000 gross square foot and 4,000 gross square foot. And staff believes that those pieces of property on kind of the lower half of original road, kind of in the original lane area, are more visible from the lower portions of around Highway 82 than the upper kind of cul-de-sac area. And so really, staff believes that area that's part of the lower piece is kind of a different character area. So we've recommended hitting in that range of square footages in the lower part of original road.
That's all I have.
I do not have any questions at this time, so we will open this up to public comment at, 7:01. So if you have a comment, please come up, state your name, and try and keep the comments directly to the application at hand.
Mic on?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Bart Johnson. I'm a land use attorney. I'm here on behalf of the neighbors to basically the southeast, so Up Valley, which is 309 Original Road. That's, 304 Original, sorry. So that's Sandy Spraker and Rick Karsten, who are here right behind me here. So Sandy has lived there since 1978. And she and her husband Paige, her ex-husband, bought that property then and knew Mr. Dillon, who created this subdivision. And I wanted to kind of start with kind of the background that this property was originally a 2.75 acre lot. Then it got subdivided into 2 lots, and then it got subdivided again. So now we have 4 lots already where there was 1, or that's the proposal, to have 4 lots where there was 1 originally. The lot got down to 1 acre approximately, 0.9 acres or so, with the duplex approval that occurred back in 1983. And at that time, Mr. Dillon came to the neighbors and said, I'd like to do this duplex, I'd like to split this lot, build a duplex with the lot line going down the middle, but I'm willing to put a covenant on the plat that says that this property will be restricted to 1 duplex between these 2 lots. And part of this proposal is to eliminate that plat restriction that the neighbors have been relying on for 40-some-odd years. So I want to make that point. And that occurred back when Eagle County had jurisdiction over this. So we don't even have those plat records right now in the town of Basalt, because the town annexed the property since that occurred. But I wanted to make clear that everyone realized that part of this proposal is to get rid of a plat restriction that was kind of a bargain deal back in 1983. And then I went to the site visit today, as did some of you, and we got a grading plan that I thought was really illustrative. I've had a chance, I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at it very closely, but the question of slopes and retaining walls kind of jumps out at you when you look at this. First of all, the steepest slopes on this property are up where the new home is proposed. That's where most of the 30% slopes are on this property. And so the applicant's trying to avoid them, but trying to avoid them in the sense that still wants to build up near the steepest part. And if you do some takeoffs with the graphic scale, you'll see a proposal that basically has a home surrounded by 200 some odd linear feet of retaining walls that's propped up on the slope, because you can't have a driveway too steep, so you're constrained by how steep the driveway can be. They obviously want views from up high on the lot. So the home is built up over the existing topography that's falling away very quickly. And so what you end up with is a finished floor elevation. So the floor of the second floor will be about 6 feet below original road. The roof will be considerably higher. So the roof is higher than original road on the home, if I'm reading the numbers correctly. And then if you look on like the northwest side of the home, which is the Up Valley side, you've got an existing topography of 6,640 feet of elevation and a retaining wall that'll be 6,657 feet high. So that's a 17-foot high retaining wall on the west side of the house in the middle. That's at that middle elevation. Then down at the bottom corner, you've got a 13-foot retaining wall, going from an elevation right now of 6,630 feet up to 6,643 feet, which we just heard don't even comply with code, because those are going to have to be stepped back at 4-foot intervals every 6 feet of gain elevation height-wise. So we're looking at a site plan that, as I understand it, couldn't even close to be built right now under current code. And it kind of begs the question of why you're even considering it at this point. I mean, it seems like it should be sent back to the drawing board. And I would strong, and by the way, the elevations, the architectural elevations show the elevations of the house, but not the retaining walls. And they're also labeled for being for a home on 200 Sabine Drive, which is on Red Mountain and Aspen. So that might have been a mislabeling issue, but when I was looking at the plans, trying to figure out how these elevations would really look with the retaining walls, I'm not seeing that translated very well. But I think a lot more investigation and maybe another site visit with some story poles and some real elevations that show these retaining walls would be appropriate, because we're looking at essentially building a lot on top of a lot to make room for a house. And I don't think that's compatible with the neighborhood. I don't think it's consistent with the topography of the lot, and is not appropriate. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bart. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm Sandy Spraker, the adjoining lot owner. And my concern is the lot split and how the house is going to be on the lot. I feel like we have been in the neighborhood for 40 years and knew the Dillons very well, who split that lot, and came to us and said, you know, we aren't going to do this if it's not okay with the neighbors, but what we are going to do is we're going to put a single building on this lot, lower lot, to just a building with 2 single-family dwellings, which is a duplex. And each duplex has its own square footage. The whole deal is not 5,000 square feet, in my opinion. But the reasoning for that was they wanted to leave the upper lot as sort of a grazing, area for the deer. Right across from my house and this lot is the Division of Wildlife had Aspen Junction leave a huge area for the deer migration. There are signs up there. I have pictures of the signs that we took. Part of the time, it's not even supposed to be walked on. People that have hunting licenses can go up there at certain times. But anyway, we were just under the impression that that treed area and migration for the deer was always going to be in front of the house, and we never had to worry about a house being all the trees cut down and just a big house sitting there. And that just concerns me. After all of this time, it's really concerning to me. If looking at the plat that he proposes, all of those trees are, in fact, on his land. All of the trees in that upper part of the area will have to come down on both sides, and his house comes all the way to the setbacks, which there will be no trees left there at all, and that is a concern to me. And it's very upsetting, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Rick Karsten. I agree with everything they said. I think we should rethink this and have story poles, stakes out where this driveway house is gonna be. And I'm also concerned about the trees and the wildlife. And with the story poles would be good for us to see how high that thing's gonna be and where it's gonna be from our view of our house. So I think we should rethink this. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christy Levine. I live at 227 Original Road, which is just above the proposed lot. I had a chance to speak to Michael yesterday about his plans. I think they're a lovely family, and I'm in full support of anyone doing reasonable work on their property. So I'm in support of that. That said, I asked him at that time if he could consider adjusting where the house is positioned, moving it down the property some, down the slope, so that it is not, what it looks like is directly on Original Road. He did say it was 20 feet off, but it looks like it's right there and right against 304, which is concerning. I know that in any building project, there's going to be trucks and construction and noise and tearing down of trees. And just as you pointed out, Sandy, at 227, which is just above, I have bears that come down, I have turkeys that come down, I have deer, I have foxes. There is a lot of wildlife on that part of Original Road. Not as much on Original Lane because the houses are much more densely put together, but as you go up Original Road, there's a lot more space. And I think the one point that I would be interested in is, yes, story poles for certain. The consideration of maybe having the house go down the slope some to mitigate some of that, the impact on wildlife and the trees, but also whether they could access that property from 168 Original Lane as it's part of their property. If you do think about it, the 4,400 square feet, which is, not that much bigger than the houses that are much higher up Original Road. But if you add that with the half of the duplex that's also in that, on the same property currently, you're talking a large, almost 6,000 square foot building on property sizes that are the same as my property or maybe your property. So I think it's more than just 4,400 square feet. It would be, you'd have to take into consideration both. And I don't want to put a stop to their construction. I just want them to do something that feels right for the neighborhood. I want to work collaboratively with them. I want there to be conversations, but I do want there to be consideration for the impact on the neighborhood, wildlife, and trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
It looks like we also have Scott Broughton has his hand up here. Let me see if I can allow Scott to talk here. Scott, if you unmute, you should be able to speak.
Hey, yeah. Can you hear me, James?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Okay, great. Hi, Commission. Nice to see you guys. Michael and Misty, nice to see you as well. We are the neighbors just downhill from Michael and Missy. We're at 164 Original Road. We're the developers of the Broughton subdivision that was recently done in just the last few years, and have sold both of the parcels, and one has actually been built on now. We're before you guys today because we fully support Michael and Missy's application. We think that their proposal, as far as lot size goes, as far as square footage of the house goes, meets the land use code. I think that, some of the things that have been presented are definitely a little biased as far as visual impact from Highway 82. We know the upper lots are way more visible than my house personally and Michael and Missy's house. And so I think that, what they're proposing is, as far as skylines or location of the road, is not as impactful as being presented. The 4,400 square feet, there are several houses that are on roughly the same size of property when you look at the Original Road and the Hillcrest Road that are substantially larger. And so I don't think 4,400 square feet is out of line. We were actually in our subdivision restricted to 3,000 square foot gross. That included the square footage of the garage. It's not an undoable or an unreasonable square footage, but it's very difficult when you start to throw a 500 to 600 square foot garage into the gross square footage calculations. That becomes a less than 2,500 square foot house. Makes it a little bit more difficult to develop, especially based on, whatever your personal program is. And so I don't think personally that what they're proposing as far as size goes is out of line with the fabric of the neighborhood. I think, and I have seen their design. I think some of these retaining wall issues are not as significant as presented of 17 and 13-foot tall walls. I think what's got to be considered as well is that based on requirements of an application, it's a significant ask that somebody spends significant amounts of money as an architect, I'm speaking as an architect, to fully design a house when the application is really about creating a subdivision. And so I think that anything that is presented as far as the house goes, there's a square footage, but it's more of a conceptual idea. And I think it's a very developed conceptual idea. So if we're looking for structural drawings, or if we're looking for, detailed soils analysis, that we all know that comes at the time of permitting and not subdivision applications. So I think in time, them as applicants will need to and have to provide that information. And so I support this. As far as the wildlife issue, we're kind of one of the lower properties on the hillside. I can show you numerous amounts of game camera photos of mountain lions, bears, deer, everything that is not impeded by lower subdivision building and density. We have them bedding in our yard. We have the bears destroying our apple trees. So, as far as trees and migration routes, they will find a way. As far as density of trees, this is a fire mitigation thing. It's security of the neighborhood. It's security of the hillside. And so I and my wife Kathy, who is also sitting here, we support this application wholeheartedly, and wish that you take a lot of these points into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
We have also Andrew Albee on the Zoom call. Andrew, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
So Andrew better support this.
Andrew's a friend of mine. I don't know that he wants to speak. I think he was here just observing.
Okay.
Thank you. If there are no other public comments, we'll close the public hearing public comments at 7:19. We're gonna get to commissioner comments and thoughts in a second. Just as Bart was presenting, is that a normal thing when we annex a property in, that we don't retain records with from the counties, or?
Well,
I mean, this is going back in time, I understand.
yeah, this goes back quite a ways. We do have records of the plats themselves, but we don't have all the background information related to minutes and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. The historian in me says that would be something that would be nice to retain if we had that. So, at this point, we'll open this up to commissioner comments. We'll go reverse. Bob, any comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Mike.
I think square footage wise, I think it's tough for us to sit up here and limit someone's square footage that is allowable under the code. With that being said, a lot of the issues I want to talk about stem exactly from the house being probably too big for the envelope it's proposed at. We talk about these large walls. They have to tier them per the code. I'm not sure if you tiered that 17-foot wall in the 3 sections with the proper separation, you're ever going to catch grade on that lot. Because the farther you come south, the farther you're going downhill, and that more walls you need. I don't know if that's possible. So I'd like to see a little more breakdown of that. The wall in the front of the house is 8 feet. That pushes the garage and driveway back, relocates the house. So it seems like there's a lot of challenges with those retaining walls and the code and how that's presented. And I'd like to see maybe a little more information in that site plan developed with a site plan with retaining walls that met the code. I think, we're running utilities up that hill. They're required to be 10 feet separation. So that easement's gonna be 25 to 30 feet wide for maintenance of both the water and sanitary line. What does that do to the lower lot? in the future, if that duplex has to incorporate a side setback, that's moving it closer to those utilities, is there even a building site at that point? Are we kind of handcuffing that lower lot into what's there today? I don't really, there's nothing that proposes that easement and that I can really visualize, so that's something to consider in my eyes. It kind of, like I said, handcuffs that lower lot into not being developable. I do worry about the removal of trees. I think even with the proposed 17-foot wall, that whole lot's gonna be clear cut. Basically, there's dry walls going in below that wall. Those are gonna be 10 feet deep, call it, to excavate that out. Everything's gonna be cut down from the utilities. And I think another thing to consider is what it looks like from the road. You know, that neighborhood's cool. There's all the houses are separated by the old growth kind of pinyon forest there, and it's a cool neighborhood aesthetically from that standpoint. And to have kind of a large house overlooming this duplex without that separation, I don't think fits the character of the neighborhood. Those are my comments.
Thanks, Mike. Cindy?
Well, this is really more of a, it's a question rather than a comment again, but since we're having the hearing really on the subdivision application, I mean, does square footage actually play into this? Or is that kind of one step ahead?
Square footage does play into it because you have to approve square footage in association with the subdivision.
Okay.
And there is a request for the specific design of the house on the upper lot that's proposed. So you're getting into a specific design to approve it. Basically, for the lower lot, if they were to redevelop the duplex, then they would require a P&Z review of a specific design on that property as well.
It might be a little confusing because this is also a site plan review, so it's not just the subdivision review, which is why you're looking at the square footages as well.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That's it.
Bill?
Yes, I do have some comments to make about this project. I personally have no issues with a lot split per se, but I do have some issues with the development on slopes over 30%. I built my house about 300 yards from here, based on a soils report from, Hepworth Pollock at the time. Dan Harden, who signed this report, wrote the report. And, you know, I did everything structurally and soils related that they required, and then some. And in the time since then, I have had a significant amount of settling on my house. Enough so that some doors don't open and close. There's relative cracking. And that being said, they're going through some real gyrations on this particular project to get the lessened area over 35% or 30% slopes, especially with that really large cantilever, which is a really big cantilever. And it doesn't appear from this drawing that any structural design has been applied to this yet. I think, you know, it's a long way, and the foundation to support this is gonna get pretty convoluted. And I'm just not confident that without a final soils report and any sort of preliminary structural information, that this is even really possible to do economically, not even economically, just to get it done in a way that won't settle, won't crack. Like I said, I've been designing houses on 30% slopes since I've been practicing here, and with this particular solution, it gives me a queasy feeling to look at it. I don't know if this is even really that possible. Now, that's none of our concern. If they do it and it cracks and doesn't, you know, they have a fabulously expensive foundation, that's not our problem, but it's a bad precedent to set on development over 30% slope. And I usually am not opposed to approving these type of applications, but this one's just, it's a bridge too far. You know, it's just, it seems like they're really stretching it thin to make this happen, and I think they're gonna have to pull a rabbit out of a hat to make it work. Also, you know, I personally believe that the house should be 3,000 to 3,500 square feet, but I'm less inclined to force them to do it, but at its current size, it does make me sort of uncomfortable. That's all I got.
Mr. Levitt?
I too would be curious to see or like to see the lot split documents, not just from a historical perspective, but also I think it's extremely pertinent to what we're looking at today. I feel like this may be buildable in some shape or form, but I don't think that this is it. You know, giving you guys' comments. You know, I think if 4,000 square foot is what we think is reasonable on that whole lot, then I would use that, and I would subtract the existing duplex of 1456, and that remaining square footage could be used in the new house. It sort of seems like one of those lot splits where we're gonna build a new house and we're gonna give the old duplex is gonna become the ADU, or maybe the deed restricted or the employee housing. Like, that's the way I would see it playing out. Yeah, I'd be curious to see if there was access from original lane instead of just coming in from the top as well. And then finally, because this is so impactful to, I'm assuming that original road has its own HOA?
Well, there are several different subdivisions there. You have the Aspen Junction subdivision, which is most of the upper portion of Original Road. You have Pine Ridge at the bottom that has its own. You've got several little subdivisions like Dillon and Broughton.
Well, so let me, we got feedback from Original Lane, but since this is so impactful to the houses above, I'd sort of like to hear more from the neighborhoods up there and see if they agree or disagree with it.
Thank you, Rob. I don't really have much to add on top of what's been said. It just seems pushing the envelope to fit this in on this space, and it could be fine-tuned and made to fit the parameters of the space maybe a little bit better. It's kind of where I'm kind of left, and hearing the engineering, I'm not, I don't come to this from an engineering background, I don't come from it from a soils expert background, but it just seems that it's raising a lot more questions than answering right now. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So where are we at?
I would kind of mirror what Bill said. I'm comfortable, I think, with the lot split in concept. I don't think I'm comfortable with the site plan of the upper lot.
Neither am I. I'm just not comfortable with it.
So staff would suggest, you could ask the applicant if they are interested in going back and looking at adjusting their site plan and kind of taking into consideration the comments you've made here, or if they would like to see if P&Z is willing to make a recommendation. That's up to you whether you want to take additional comments from the applicant.
Are you suggesting we make a motion to table?
Well, I would suggest that you ask the applicants if they have comments on whether they would like to table it and try to address the comments that have come up tonight, or if they would like to see if P&Z would like to make a recommendation.
Thank you, James. Michael, Missy, would you like to comment at this time? Give you the floor for a few minutes.
And I'm just somewhat thinking out loud. First off, thank you for kind of being insightful into what you view as important here. I think it would be helpful for us to know concrete next steps as to information we can get, data we can provide that would make you feel confident moving forward. I mean, I do think that we probably would ask to table this at this point in time. And, I don't know if you would provide maybe a minute or two to just speak with my team and, Michael Ettinger, our architect. But I think in terms of if we are going to table it, just seeing what you would view really as important, whether we need to do a full soils report. And I believe a full soils report was done on the Broughton subdivisions, which was submitted to you, which would be very, very similar. And or anything else, we'd be happy to look at that. But maybe, is it possible to take a quick minute?
I think for tonight's purposes, like, I don't think we want you to necessarily come back to us right now, but I think we can come up with a list of what we've talked about between the soils, the slope issues, the retaining walls, the engineering, the utilities, the overall size of the project. I think, I'm not sure from P and Z it came up, but as far as the sight lines, your neighbors' story posts, I think those are the 5 or 6. There's a wildlife mitigation issue, I guess, or as far as the impact on the wildlife, it sounds like there's concerns about the impact of removing the trees. I mean, I think you've made conditions that you would re-mitigate for that, but if you're gonna clear cut the site, you're gonna clear cut the site, and that's not as easy to do as well. So those are the 6 or 8 items off the top of my head. Did I miss anything?
Direction on FAR.
Direct, yeah.
I don't know if we can do a consensus.
I don't know if we did a consensus. I think there was trepidation within the code, but at the same time, I think direction maybe is seeing if it can go smaller.
I think there is a consensus that we'd like to see it smaller.
Yeah.
I'm actually okay with it at the square footage it is, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want it to go smaller, but how it interacts with the site, I think, isn't satisfactory.
That was the main point I was making, because that's, I think that's our main purview here, is the site design.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I'm just taking the pulse. I think if we go ahead and you ask us to go ahead with a motion, I'm not sure right now you're gonna get the outcome you want. I can't say that out loud, or if I said it out loud, I'm not sure I'm not taking a vote for everybody, but I'm just kind of reading the room for that, versus if we table it, we can come back if you want to address some of these concerns and questions.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also just trying to figure out the best steps forward. We're happy to try to quell some of your concerns, take a second look at this, and come back with the best data that we can. So I think we're happy to table it, and I'm not exactly sure how that works. If I would just coordinate with James to get back on the docket, but I do really appreciate all of your feedback. Thank you. It's all, I think, well-founded.
So yeah, you would have to table it to a date certain, and if you table it to a date certain, then there could be a continuation once again if the applicant's not ready to go at that date certain. And I know, Michael, you have some obligations here soon in terms of scheduling.
We're going to be at Children's Hospital till mid-October. Regardless, I'd ask maybe to go into the early winter, maybe November or December.
So in terms of November, you are looking at P and Z dates of
7 and 21.
November 7th or probably November 7th.
Is it possible to look at the December dates?
Sure. December dates would be December 5th and December 19th.
I have no preference. I think Michael Ettinger's there. Can you ask if he has any preference of anything, either of those two dates?
December 5th would be the first date in December.
Does that require a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to table till, table this item till December 5th.
James, do we have to put any conditions with that, or that's enough?
No, that's fine.
Second.
Second from Rob, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion is tabled. Good luck this week.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So the next item on our agenda is commissioner comments and staff updates.
You guys need me to go? You need a little break there?
That's it.
Staff updates. Across the street, the Gail Falwell sculpture of the three dancing figures is underway getting installed. They're currently excavating the pad for that installation. It's just south of the Free Range Restaurant. So there's a little bit of structural work because those are giant bronze figures, but it's going well, and hopefully that is all installed by the first week of October. So that's exciting. Midland money, if anybody has any left, or anybody out there, the program ends September 30th, so use it or lose it.
Is there any more to pick up?
Oh, no, it's all gone. It's been very successful, and we thank everyone for supporting our businesses along Midland. Similarly, the water main installation along Midland is now complete, and the team is now working on the individual property connections from that water main, which we expect to be done by the end of the year. It's going well.
Is that below grade?
Below grade. Yep. So there'll still be some minor traffic impacts, and you'll still see the machinery out there. And then what you were waiting for is the Basalt Public Arts Commission mural competition was very successful. We had an online and in person. We did get some votes in person. Voting campaign, and the People's Choice Award went to Kristen Hicks, who had a very family-friendly mural. I won't describe it doing any justice, but basically it had some wildlife in it, I think a bear and a deer and maybe something else, very family-friendly. She has agreed to work with us and locate that mural somewhere at the Basalt Pool. So that's really exciting. We did have one student entry who did a really awesome piece, and BPAC voted to use his piece and his process to start some youth arts programs, which are to be developed. So really cool. Throughout the mural competition process, we had some unexpected interest come our way with different property owners along Midland who are interested in having murals on their buildings. So we don't want to circumvent any negotiations between them and the artists, but we're likely to have at least one, maybe up to 3 more murals come downtown.
Cool.
So more on that when those negotiations go forward.
They come through us or council or just?
They go through BPAC,
and that's it?
and if it happens to be on a historic designated property, then you might see it because it'll come through a site plan review, I think. And those are my exciting updates. James, did you have anything?
Just that it looks like the Jadwin application should come back on the 3rd. I think that's a realistic date for you to see him back.
A question, you might not know this. Whenever you walk by Stott's Mill, it sounds like there's running water in the grates. It just sounds like it's continual. I don't know if that's normal. It seemed a little odd, like in the storm
Southside
grates.
Drive?
Yeah, right on the drive. So walking up to school, the 2 storm drains, sounds like it's continually running.
Okay, we'll we'll
Maybe that's how
check
they
it
fill
out.
that pond?
Yeah, I hear it when I ride my bike up it,
Yeah,
even in the afternoon.
yeah.
with
So
water doing
I don't know what it is, but it's been for a while.
There is a pipe ditch that's under there that goes across to the property that's just north of the mini storage, so,
Okay.
you know, that could be part of it, but we'll.
If you don't mind, I'm just intrigued. And
Maybe
then,
we're hearing it more because with the new buildings there, reflecting off the.
it's been since they've been working on the water issues there, you know, before the buildings were in even, I remember hearing it. So I don't know if it is the ditching or not. Just on the Stotts Milk front, if I'm not mistaken, right, we approved 13 single homes on the outside, right? And then on the main streets, those are supposed to be duplexes, is that correct?
No, they're single-family or duplex lots. You can have a total of 14 duplexes in there, which would be basically if you owned 2 lots that were adjacent to each other, you can build a common wall.
Okay.
Otherwise, they have to be single-family.
Single family, okay, because what I'm seeing going in looks single family, so I was confused, so thank you for that clarification.
I think right now, there's 1 duplex under construction and like 3 single-family.
Yeah,
That's what it looks like.
yeah, the single family homes actually look relatively smaller than I would have thought, so we'll see when they're done. Other comments?
Is there a construction update for the water coming out of the hill on Cypress?
I know Public Works is working on that. I don't have the exact details.
You mean that water right in front of your house?
The water feature on the road?
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah. What's going on? Is there a burst pipe or something?
I think there was a new spring.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a new spring that has developed and
Oh.
is watering the road now.
Leaf collection's gonna happen, any updates?
Leaf collection is gonna happen. I don't think we have it scheduled, the date exactly yet. The provider, it's always weather dependent on when we think it's coming or going, so, luckily they're really flexible, but, no update on that quite yet.
Similar idea, the 4 weekends or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any news on BCC?
No building permit at this time.
You know what the holdup is?
I think they're working through some, construction document things.
I wasn't here last meeting. Why did Jadwin get pushed back again? Is it-
So Jadwin, they had their public hearing at the last meeting, their initial public hearing. They had materials to respond to, like intersection improvement designs, and some other materials that they had to submit. And so they're working on those. Also, the post committee was scheduled to review the application before it came back to P and Z, but they had to table it as well.
Nothing else at 7:45. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Bill first, do we have a second?
Second.
Mike, gotcha. All in favor? Aye.
You know, Mike's been around for a while now.
Motion, meeting adjourned at 7:45.